Hello again. This is a further installment on working with the very, very busy tartans. I finished these two kilts and again pleated to them to the set as per the customer's instruction. And when I got them done, because pleating to the set isn't my favorite, and I believe it's because the majority of my career, frankly, the majority of my life has been the bulk of my life has been involved with and wearing military kilts, always pleated to the stripe. So I always sort of approach these with a bit of reluctance. And when I got these two finished, I was thinking for a second and went, hang on, that wasn't the ordeal that sometimes it's been. What did I do differently? So we're looking at these two kilts. One is in the Harkness tartan. They're both very busy. This is a 7.5-inch set. And a total of 23 pleats. Now this is for the same individual, right? This in the Pride tartan, it's an 8-inch set, so it's a difference of only ½ inch in the scale of the tartan. But in this case, we've got 31 pleats. And I realized what I had done, well, I don't say accidentally, what I had done without thinking about it. I just sort of did this intuitively and then realized what I had done afterwards. I'm going to back up a little bit because the differences we see here, what we see with most tartans, say for example, many tartans, is, as with this Henderson, is we have one or more really strong elements that immediately catch the eye. In this case, the yellow line and the white line. And the rest of it is fairly subtle, so it acts as a backdrop, as a pleasing contrast that doesn't really fight for attention, doesn't compete for attention with the stronger elements. With the Pride tartan, we've got two strong elements, the yellow followed by the purple. The rest of it is fairly riotous and cheerful, but again, we have those two let's call them the primary, the main elements, which we can concentrate on. The Harkness is a lot busier. We've got, and now we don't have a single element, we have groups that I think I would call the primary elements, or the main elements. So we have the red and yellow group centered on the red, and we've got the white group centered on the green. But again, the difference between these, the size of the set isn't that great, and we're making it the same size kilt for the same individual. So why, with a ½ inch difference in the size of the set, why do we have 23 pleats versus 31? And I think what happened was I was working with my table of pleat widths, which I told you about and asked you to make up your own rather than just blindly copy mine, but work out by counting, the old way of counting with the tape measure to determine pleat numbers per width of pleat and desired width across the back of the kilt. So I was playing with these, and basically I was just shopping for numbers. I knew what my maximum number of pleats were going to be, and I knew what the widths were going to be. So basically I disregarded, I didn't pay much attention to the correlation between the two. I just went shopping for the numbers. And what I found was, I believe in this case, that each of these tartans is, and I'm making these phrases up, this terminology up as I go along, so I hope you'll understand me, give it some thought, is that each of these was sort of based on a different scale, shall we say. This is worked at about a ½ inch scale. It's almost like a base 10 counting system, or a base 12, or a base 20 counting system. And this worked out this seemed to work best with a 5/8. And I'm not being completely clear here, I believe, because it's still not completely clear in my mind. I've just realized that I'm onto something here, and I'm hoping that by getting you thinking about it too, we'll each arrive at a conclusion. Hopefully it'll be the same conclusion, or at least it'll be complementary conclusions. So, Okay, I'm going to put these away for a minute. I hear someone coming up the stairs, so I hope they don't shout hello down the stairs in just a minute. Let me just put these out of the way. Because if you look over on the table, the next kilt we have to work on is the Anderson tartan. And we had, there was a comment in one of the videos recently of somebody who's getting ready to make a kilt out of this tartan and wasn't looking forward to it at all. And I have to admit, until the penny dropped, pardon me, with this half-formed idea I have about the scale of the tartan and how it affects pleat widths, or how it influences pleat widths. I was looking forward to this with a fair amount of trepidation and anxiety, right? So what I had done, the first thing I had done is because looking at this cloth, again, we have groups of strong elements rather than individual bits. I mean, we have I would say the strongest element is this group here of myriad colors. The second, I guess, the complementary one would be this red line. So the problem is because everything is so close together that it's going to be extremely difficult to taper the pleat, because we absolutely cannot have an element of the design vanishing into a pleat. Now, normally what that would mean, my immediate reaction would be, what that would mean would be we would have to sew the kilt where the pleats had absolutely the minimum taper, or perhaps even no taper at all, or having said that, we want even a 1/16 of an inch taper because we need a bit of an A-line so it hangs properly. But in any case, there would be so little taper that they would be, for all intents and purposes, parallel. And that the shaping of the kilt would have to be done with a very dramatic A-line, which I've never been very good at, but I was steeling myself to think, I'm just going to have to man up and do it this time. And this is generally done by doing a bit of origami to take up some material and then pressing it and folding it. I'm not a tremendous fan of it. Other people do it very well. I've got to start working harder at doing it well, because in my experience, when I do this, I wind up with I can feel the extra layer of cloth inside. And once you feel it, you keep going back. It's like playing with a wound. You know, once you feel it, you just can't keep your damn hands off of it after that time. So what I did was I sat down. Okay, first thing I did was I started with my measurements: 38 waist, 42 hip. So a 38, I just divided in half, twice 19. 42, again, I do a relatively gentle A-line in the apron, so from 19 to 20 works best with me, and then 22 left over. I then chalked the two aprons, one on either end. There's the left-hand edge of the front apron. Determined how deep my apron pleat was going to be. And this is all, the cloth's a bit muddled right now, so I can't show you, but it's about 1/4 of the total width of the apron. And then having done that, I counted the number of repeats between, here's the left-hand edge of the outside apron. On the other end, we have the right-hand edge of the inside apron. And I counted the repeats. And I came to a total of 33 repetitions of the set between the two. So my next step, I sat down with my gauges here, which are graduated in 1/16 of an inch. They're a little bit out of order now. Yeah, 5/8, which is 10/16, 11/16, and so on. And where's my 5/8? And I just worked with a bit of chalk just to do a sample to see how that would work. And again, it's so very busy. I think I can do a 5/8 pleat. Call it maybe 33. If I do a 5/8 pleat, 5/8 at the waist, and then 5/8 plus a 1/16 at the hip, it'll give us that minimal amount of taper. But it also means that we won't be too discomfited by how busy the tartan is as we're sewing up the pleat. The other thing that I've done, and this is also directed towards the client who's going to be watching this is I took the time to set up every possible variation of pleats. And if we want to start here and take a look, get in a little close, here we have pleated to the red line on the blue, pleated to the black line, guarded by red, pleated to the double yellow lines, pleated to the red line on green, and finally pleated to the blue, guarded by red. And the way I've done that, it's just a little trick to make sure that you're getting them all, is over here when I started with the blue line, I pinned it up reference to the blue, and then having done that, I looked, what's the next major element? Well, red, light, and black. I'll pin it to that. What's the next one? Double yellow, because I don't think I want to do an alternating yellow and white. Maybe, who knows, maybe the customer will like it. Okay, what's the next major element? Well, blue on red. What's the next major element? I'd say that fat red line on green. So by working methodically there from left to right, from what we're going to call the prime, the main, the strong elements, just by going from left to right, we managed to get them all. So I've taken pictures of that, sent it to the client for him to take a look at. I'm going to ask him that he looks at the video, at the photos, and starts to make up a decision, comes to a preliminary decision before he watches this video, because it's not until I've heard his opinion that I'm going to point out that of all of these variations of pleating to the stripe, to my mind at least, usually when I pleat to the stripe, I'll immediately go, that's the one. And often the customer who's with me will go, that's the one I want. It immediately catches the eye. I have to admit, for the first time in a long time, not one of these immediately strongly catches the eye. I mean, the yellow does, because it gives me a very strong, in fact, the strongest vertical element. These others have a more subtle vertical element, but they have a strong horizontal element. And I used to, I would try to lure a customer away from a strong horizontal element because it's not slimming. I no longer do that. I'll mention it, but I won't push the matter, because I have met customers who wanted a broader, a strong horizontal element. As one fellow put it, when I expressed it to him, he says, yeah, it's not slimming. And he says, it's bootylicious. And I went, okay, bootylicious you want, bootylicious you're going to have. So yeah, of all of our options, one has a very strong vertical element, but none of them are particularly immediately eye-catching. Generally, when we pleat to the stripe, the advantage of pleating to the stripe, we have a maximum number of pleats. We pleat to the sett, we have a fewer number of pleats, for the reason I've explained elsewhere. But often, very often, pleating to the stripe is a handy and it's a convenient way to deal with a very busy tartan. It all comes down to which of these is the most pleasing contrast with what the apron's going to look like. I can't answer that question, because for once, again, I don't have an immediate visceral response, right? And I think that in this case, because again, I do tend to be inclined towards pleating to the stripe. In this case, despite my innate prejudice towards stripe, I really believe that pleating it to the sett has equal merit, equal value, because it's not so very different as far as being eye-catching. This is eye-catching, but only the customer can tell me if this is a pleasing contrast to the apron. If he doesn't think so, I can't make up my mind. It may be that pleating this to the sett just might be the best option for all reasons, right? Just because we can't find a pleasing because we can't find a pleasing contrast with these, but also because of all of these, only one has a vertical element, and that we might as well get that vertical element by pleating it to the sett. And this has been a bit long-winded, but Hope you get that. And if you don't get it, keep thinking. Maybe ask some questions. Because again, by using the gauges, by playing with pleat widths when deciding how to pleat, there's something there, I think, that is going to turn out to be an advantage to us if we pursue it. So thank you.